are we doing a good enough job in public schools of preparing our kids to have that critical thinking mechanism to be able to discern and ultimately be good educated
Citizens.
citizens,
Yeah.
right?
And I
Yeah.
think, in schools, as you know, a lot of schools and districts are developing that profile of a graduate, right? And most, if not all, the ones I've seen there's some language around developing a global citizen, right? A responsible citizen, an active citizen, someone who is aware and active in their community, right? That responsibility that we all have to one another to be informed and to be responsible. But yeah, that the critical thinking and how do we teach them about credibility and how do we discern if something's credible or not credible, right? And we've taught that throughout the history of time, but I think now it's even more challenging, um, again, because um, organizations that you might have been able to trust in the past, I don't know that you can no longer trust some of those organizations.
Well, hello, everyone. My name is Michael McCormick, and you are listening to the Superintendent Hot Seat, where bold superintendent leaders share the real stories behind their most difficult challenges and decisions as they work to improve student safety, wellness, and attendance in a system not yet fully prepared to support those entering our schools. In today's episode, I'm delighted to have as a guest Julie Vitale from Oceanside School District. And Julie, I'm going to kick right off. So, the question I'm going to ask you is, what do you believe is the major shift our schools need to make to tackle the growing issues of anxiety, depression, bullying, and violence among students, which affect their ability to learn and feel safe, as well as the teacher's ability to teach effectively? So, there you have it.
Thanks for starting off with a softball, McCormick. I appreciate that very much.
That's right. That's right.
Well, honestly, I think first and foremost, we need to understand some of the causes of the anxiety, the depression, the stress that students are feeling, and understanding how dynamics are different. And while some things are similar for kids and what they experience now, I believe there are a lot of differences of what kids are experiencing literally in this last decade, and even more specifically, and I would say the last 5 or 6 years. So I think I'll frame this response first talking about what I see as the causes. Um, Kids all have the things that we all grew up with, the stresses that we all grew up with, like family dynamics, right? Like that can cause a lot of different kinds of stress for kids, depending what your family situation is, who's raising you, what kind of stable or unstable household you live in. And we know that there were great impacts on family dynamics and stability with the pandemic. And I think the pandemic has a lot of impact still on kids, but I'll talk about that a little bit more specifically. And then, of course, there's societal pressures, which have always existed in the sense of media. But two things that I think have heightened stress for kids is the introduction of social media into their daily lives and the kind of violence that they are privy to, that they have access to, that they are experiencing and seeing and watching, not just on TV, but literally on devices that they can hold in their hands. And those are the things I think are very different, right? Okay, so you have the societal pressure that we all grew up with, but now you have it in your hands, and you have it in a way that you can see what friends are doing, or you can see what people throughout the world are doing. And depending on who you like and who you follow, and what algorithms feed your information is really going to create your day, right? It's going to create, do you see positive information? Do you see negative information? Do you see accurate information, or do you see inaccurate information? And those are all things we never had to deal with as kids. And even kids a decade ago didn't have to deal with. So I think that's a major cause that we need to address. And I'll talk a little bit about how I think districts are addressing this and how I think in Oceanside we're addressing this. Um, the violence piece, growing up, right? Violence, like my generation, we practice for nuclear war, right? That
Isn't
was
that
kind of a,
crazy? I
right?
was thinking about that. I
Yes.
remember sitting in, my senior government class,
Yep.
and this was, I'll say it, you don't have to, but for me, I was a senior in high school in 1985,
Yep.
and
It's
I
because you're older
remember
than me.
going through those drills.
Yeah.
Side note, I also grew up by the ocean
Yep.
and got used to hearing those citywide like
Mm.
alert
Hmm.
sirens. I don't
Yeah.
even know if that still exists today,
Yeah.
but that was a part of our child, or at least my childhood. I don't want
Yeah.
to date you, I'll date me.
Yeah. For the record, you're older than me. A couple
Good.
years. Yeah, exactly, right? So we grew up with, training for safety during a nuclear war as if hiding
It would
underneath
have,
your desk would give you
right?
that safety, right? Okay, so whatever. Maybe it was more of an existential threat, but we endured that, right? And in California, where I grew up, we of course trained for earthquakes, and other parts of the country they trained for tornadoes, hurricanes, all that kind of thing. And those are real things that we knew we needed training for. But that direct threat of nuclear um, proliferation was always kind of way out there. Now in schools, we train for gun violence, right? We train for real intrusion. We train for lockdowns that may not have anything to do what's happening on the school site. It may be something that's happening in the community,
Right.
but we lock down schools now if there's any kind of threat to our students and staff. And usually that threat comes in the form of some kind of weaponry that somebody has. And it's real for kids. Shootings happen all the time. And they happen in supermarkets, they happen in movie theaters, they happen randomly on freeways, they happen in schools, they happen in churches, they happen in all these places that we feel are really safe places for us as people, right? Church, school.
It's interesting you bring that up, and it might be kind of a side note, but I just remember the fear, the long-term fear. Like, I had some staff members who were present in Vegas at the
Mm,
country concert,
yes. Yes.
just
Yep.
outside the Mandalay Bay there.
Yep.
And here you are, you're having a good time, and you think the last place you would ever have to
Yep.
deal with an active shooter is at a concert.
Yep.
And the way it was such a traumatic event
Hmm.
because it was so unexpected for
Yep.
people, and it really caused some long-term distress for those staff members. So I totally acknowledge, what you're saying is that
Yeah.
violence is coming into places that were always considered safe spaces, and that's something that we didn't deal with as kids.
Right. And it is my niece was at that concert, my goddaughter. So that hits very close to home. And you and I both worked in Riverside County at that time, and we had close friends and staff. In addition to family members that were there, so that was very very close to home, and so with that example, Mike, it's not there's more of a feeling of it's not about if that's going to happen. It's like when are we going to experience? Where am I going to be? Because it's so disgustingly common now, the gun violence that we experience in this country. So that is very real for people. It's very real for staff. It's very real for students. So dealing with that, and how do you deal with that growing up in a world that's and in our country that is really the most divisive it's been certainly in my lifetime. I know there's been division throughout our entire history at different points in time, but for my lifetime, this is the most division that I believe we've ever experienced. And another thing that's contributing to, I believe, the stress and the um, the uncertain feelings that kids are experiencing is at the highest level of government, they're seeing, and they have access to it, right? So it's not like they have to watch the nightly news at 8. It
Oh, they
just might
see it
come
on
in their media feed, right? And
they
they're
see it
getting
on
feeds.
TikTok.
Yeah, it's on TikTok. Absolutely. So the places where they are, this
That's where
kind
it's
of
at.
stuff is, right? And it's bullying at the highest levels of government, name calling at the highest levels of government, the highest level of government wanting to limit the rights of American citizens because they might have a particular label associated with them. People at the highest level of governments lying, out and out lying, and recreating historical facts. Those things absolutely are contributing to the anxiety and the distress that our students are feeling. Because then if we're, what do we believe, right? And how do we discern what to believe? These kids grew up accessing social media.
Right.
So helping them discern between what's accurate and what's not. But if you have your highest levels of government lying on a daily basis and recreating history and facts, how do you reconcile that if you're a kid?
Yeah. And it's interesting because on one hand, like I do have the sense that there's a level of social consciousness amongst our youth that is higher
Yeah,
than what we've
definitely.
seen in the past
Definitely.
because they are exposed to this
Mm,
stuff. And it's interesting too because I think it's our young people that can detect
mm,
scams
mm.
and
Yeah,
untruthful information, sometimes actually faster than people in my generation.
yeah,
My
that
own
makes
kids
sense.
will go, "Oh, that's not true. You can't believe that." And I'm like, "Really?" And they're like, "Yeah, think about it." So, in some ways that muscle is being developed amongst our youth. But I guess to me the bigger question is, should it be?
Yeah.
Should they have to wrestle with,
Mm.
these really important, I guess it's discernment at its core level. And are we doing a good enough job in public schools of preparing our kids to have that critical thinking mechanism to be able to discern and ultimately be good educated
Citizens.
citizens,
Yeah,
right? Right?
right. And I
Yeah.
think, in schools, as you know, a lot of schools and districts are developing that profile of a graduate, right? And most, if not all, the ones I've seen are, there's some language around developing a global citizen, right? A responsible citizen, an active citizen, someone who was aware and active in their community, right? That responsibility that we all have to one another to be informed and to be responsible. Um, but yeah, that the critical thinking and how do we teach them and about credibility and how do we discern if something's credible or not credible, right? And we've
Yeah.
taught that throughout the history of time, but I think now it's even more challenging. Um, again, because um, organizations that you might have been able to trust in the past, I don't know that you can no longer trust some of those organizations and some of those people
Yeah.
and some of those people in positions of power that in the past are the ones that have delivered information, good news, bad news, to American citizens. And we just can't trust those sources anymore.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because I think that, I mean, certainly during the pandemic, one of the things we were trying to do as a school district, and I have to believe you were doing the same thing, is to position our school districts in our local communities to be that trusted voice for information about the pandemic and
Yeah.
what was going
Hmm.
on and
Yep.
all the because it was
Yep.
interesting. We were getting lots of advice, but no real decisions. And so we were
Yeah.
kind of left
Yeah.
as superintendents to try and make sense of all this advice that was coming our way
Yeah.
and make the best decisions for our local communities. And I guess I'm just trying to kind of draw some sort of a parallel line here that we get lots of guidance and lots of advice around how to best position kids to be ready for their future, but the ball is really in our court in terms of how do we actually do that.
Yeah, you're bringing me back to some dark times, McCormick. Fridays in California, where we'd get updates and things that
Right?
we literally had to change for Monday in our schools during the pandemic,
Yeah.
and really become medical experts, right? And how we were communicating the information to our communities in our
Yeah,
various.
because I mean,
Yeah,
it's
it's rough.
crazy when you think about it.
Yeah.
Like, I never knew who our county health officer
Yep.
was
Yeah.
prior to the pandemic. I couldn't have named that person by name. I had no
Nope.
idea. I didn't even know what they did for a living,
Yeah.
and then coming out of it, it's like, well, now I know exactly what they do and what their responsibilities are,
Yep.
and the impact that they have on trying to
Yep.
keep the community safe. It's just fascinating to me, and it's not to sidetrack this conversation, but I guess somewhere in my brain I was drawn. I guess it's really around navigating uncertainty.
Hmm.
We're
Yes.
we're
Yes.
facing an
Yes.
uncertain future.
Yes.
There's a lot of ambiguity about what's
Mm.
going on,
Hmm.
and yet we're charged with the responsibility to best prepare our students to navigate this uncertainty that lies ahead.
Yeah.
And how do we do that? Because we literally have the future sitting in our school systems
Yep.
right now. And so
Right.
I guess that's really the crux of the conversation is how do we approach that?
Yeah, I think as we're navigating uncertainty ourselves,
Right.
right? Constantly. And the pandemic was certainly a good example of the uncertainty that we were all living through in real time, yet we were um, wanting to provide some kind of predictability for kids, right? Some kind of stability. And I think in our school environments, that's something that we can do is provide that some of that stability and predictability. And so what I see happening, across the country and certainly in Oceanside is um, a real focus on social emotional learning and social emotional health for all levels of the school system, right? For students, we're talking about it now more in depth than we ever have. For staff, we're talking about it more in depth than we ever have, and for families, right? We've now taken school systems have now taken on the role to really address how can we support our parents, our guardians, and our caregivers to support their kids because they didn't necessarily grow up with these challenges, so they don't necessarily have thoughts about, well, how do I help my kid on social media when their friends are talking about them or whatever, and being harassed through a media communication device that we didn't have to deal with when we were kids, right? So, like one of the things that we're doing in Oceanside, and I know a lot of districts are actually working with this organization, is the Cook Center for Human Connection. It's an organization that serves districts nationally, and they have platforms that parents, guardians, caregivers can access. We pay for some of those services through the school district, but parents can access professionals on how to deal with very difficult situations, and it's real time coaching for parents, real time assistance that can help them help their kids through difficult situations. Because a lot of what we do as parents and caregivers is help help the youngsters based on our experiences, right? And how
Right.
we were helped or how we navigated a situation. But they're navigating situations that we've never been through, that we've never dealt with. And so offering, I think, a higher level of assistance has been something that we've been able to do. And I know a lot of districts throughout the country have been able to do. But I think more locally, like that assistance with students that we've offered through providing, school counselors at the elementary level full time, and certainly at the middle school and high school level. We've added social workers to really get in there to help with that complete um, uh, sense of services, right? So you can get
Well, and a lot of times, there's two things that I think about that are great value adds. One is the therapeutic component,
yeah,
which your regularly trained school counselors are not trained in therapy.
yeah,
And so
exactly.
that's
They are
that's
not.
that's an added component. And then the
Hmm.
other thing I think that they're able to pay attention to in greater detail is the family dynamic,
Yeah. Yeah.
and get a little bit deeper into that. So, kudos to you and your board of education for
Yes.
making the commitment. That's a huge, I shouldn't even call it a commitment. I should call it an investment in providing those additional resources for your families and your students. And so what are some of the things that you've seen as positive benefits from that?
Yeah, and you're exactly right. It is an investment, and it every year we've added on another layer as new issues, concerns, challenges, you know, have been presented before us. And those wraparound services that social workers can really assist with, right? So when there's food insecurity, and that is a real issue that many of our families face. That food insecurity, access to various kinds of healthcare, right? We provide, through eye exams and eyeglasses to dental exams and assistance with dental issues. So all of those things contribute to lack of attendance, right? So if we're able to help families address those issues, then we're able to get kids to school more often and more consistently, especially at the younger ages, right? Kids don't miss school at the younger ages because they don't want to go. Because kids at the younger
That's,
ages, they love school. It's a
that's
fun
right.
place. We
It's
have
where their
beautiful
friends are.
playground. They love their
And they're
teachers.
excited to learn. Let's face it.
Yes,
The problem is we kind of systematically beat that enthusiasm out of them by the time they get into high school. And that's for another
that's a
podcast.
whole other conversation about those
But
kinds of
but you're
situations.
you're absolutely right. I mean, I'm recalling that, one of the things we discovered in my district is there was not a single laundromat anywhere within the
Mm,
boundaries of the school district. Isn't that
wow.
crazy? And
That is
so
crazy.
we found out, one of the simple
Yeah.
basic reasons why kids were having a hard time coming to school is because they didn't have
Clean
clean
clothes.
clothes.
Yeah.
And so we
Hmm.
created our own laundromat.
Yep.
And, sometimes people would say, like, why, as a school district, are you creating
Yeah.
your own laundromat? I mean,
Yeah.
is that even a good use of taxpayer dollars? And the truth is, we stand by it, and we think it is. And I was talking to somebody just before Christmas, and they were averaging over 500 loads of laundry a week.
Wow.
And so there is definitely a
I
need there.
mean,
And you talk about the eyeglasses and the
yep.
dental services and
Yep.
the food insecurity.
Right.
Um, and I think people would be shocked to find out that, in California, where we're both at, in Southern California, that
Yeah.
these are challenges that our families and communities are facing, but it's real.
It's real. In fact, several of our schools, and we build on it every year, have food pantries right there at the school site for that food insecurity. And that's something that's been in Oceanside at a couple of our schools for a while. Um, and the problem persists. And that's why we continue to grow those services. And we're fortunate in San Diego County for sure. There are a lot of services, and where we are in Oceanside, that assist with that food insecurity, but make it even more local and more accessible to our families right there at the school site, is very important. And we've received criticism, not from credible, I will call them non credible people who come to our board meetings. And that might seem scathing, but believe me, they are non credible people. They come and blast us for providing those kinds of services at school. But Mike, you and I know, and anybody who's worked in a school, if a kid can't see, then how can they learn to read? Right. And not all
Absolutely.
of our families have the ability to provide that healthcare just because the way healthcare works, and people's abilities to attain jobs that where they're able to get healthcare. So if we can work with partners in the community that provide those services, we're going to do that, right? We're going to help them. And if they have pain in their mouth because they can't get dental care, then they might not be able to eat. And if you can't eat, then you can't concentrate and you're hungry. And again, you can't learn to read and you can't focus at school. So this board takes that criticism and continuously invests in bringing those services again locally to the students where they're very much needed.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think we're at a good place here. We're going to take a quick little break. And so let's pause here and continue this amazing conversation after a quick 30-second break for a message from our producer, Muzu, a company rethinking student wellness with bite-sized, Netflix-style behavior modeling videos, where students can watch peers facing similar challenges and gain fresh perspectives on resolution. It's the only SEL platform that's truly click and play, enabling teachers to deliver a full SEL lesson in 15 minutes or less.
Creating a safe, supportive environment is key to our learners' success. With nearly every district prioritizing social-emotional well-being to reduce suspension rates, decrease chronic absenteeism, and improve academic performance, the challenge is how to achieve this without adding to your staff's workload. Discover Muzoom, a groundbreaking student-driven platform that uses real-world choose-your-own-adventure bite-sized movies to make SEL engaging for students, easy for teachers to teach, and more cost-effective for districts to implement. Check out Muzoom today.
All right, we're back with Dr. Julie Vitale. And Julie, man, it's been fantastic. And I think you've done a really amazing job of kind of not maybe saying it explicitly, but I'll say it. The power of having a board of education that understands that making these investments for students and families in their community is so powerful. Talked about accessibility and some of the great things that you're doing through a partnership. It sounds like a really key partnership. That's a resource where families can reach out and get some ideas and some support with having those difficult conversations with students around, violence and trauma and all the stuff that we've gone through. It seems like this post-pandemic period is lasting a lot longer than any of us predicted it ever would.
Yeah.
And we kind of touched on this idea of this uncertainty and kind of ambiguous future that lies ahead. One of the things I wanted to do was kind of switch the conversation now to one of, where do you turn to in terms of networks to help you in your job? They say every Olympic gold medalist has a coach.
Yeah, sure.
And and I say it like that because I think sometimes superintendents or CEOs of organizations may shy away from the idea of, having a good, solid network that may or may not include coaching. And so where have you found, a really solid return on investment in terms of the networks that you participate in?
Yeah, I'll tell you, I have various networks and colleagues that I turn to because I don't want to wear anybody out. Because truly, that's how much assistance I've needed throughout the years, right? Because things are very, very challenging. When I first became a superintendent, I turned to people that had experience in the position, that had been successful superintendents, and I had a formal coach. I just really called him someone I paid to listen to me. And then he was really great about dealing with me and talking me off ledges. And he'd always start it like, this is how, every time I would call him, he'd be like, okay, Jules, this is what I heard you say. And this is what I'm going to tell you to do. And then he slowly weaned me off of that, right? And then asked me, well, what do you think you should do? Blah, blah, blah. He was a great coach. And then it definitely moved into various networks. I have networks here in San Diego County. Of course, when I was in Riverside County, I had fellow soups like yourself that I could turn to, that I could give a call. And now, so Riverside County, San Diego County, in my state in California, I'm on the Superintendent's Council for our state organization and have developed networks through that organization. And nationally, I've grown my network through the Superintendent's Association, AASA. And I now have colleagues that that live in all different states throughout the entire country that I've learned from. You know, a colleague in Montana really helped me dive deeper into providing social emotional supports for our students and in providing me information on what some of those national organizations that we could partner with. So, you know, what I love about the national networks is just when we think that we're the only district that fill in the blank, you attend a meeting with colleagues from other places in the country and share about the latest issue. And then, you know, 20 people will jump on and say, oh my goodness, we had that issue. This is what we did, or here's how we're handling it. And colleagues, whether I know people or not, sometimes I've had to reach out to colleagues that I knew experienced an issue that I hadn't yet experienced. I'm like, well, the worst they could do is say no, that they don't want to help me. And of course, McCormick, nobody has ever said no.
Right.
Not one superintendent has been like, yeah, I don't know you, lady. I'm gonna hang up on you. They return the calls, they return the emails, they pick up the phone. And I think that's just been, you know, a beautiful network. So we can find them. We just need to participate in our local organizations. And I've just appreciated being able to grow as a leader through the experiences and friendships that I've had with people throughout the country. And there's so many beautiful success stories of other women that are killing it out there in the superintendency. And that always gives me great strength and hope. Some of them are in very big districts, and you listen to their stories about how they got to that place and how they've been successful. And it just constantly, those are things that motivate me to keep growing and keep doing and trying to get better. And the honesty that people have been able to be vulnerable and share their challenges and their successes. I've just really appreciated that. I didn't always have exposure to superintendents who conducted themselves that way. So when I was able to grow my own network of people, I was delightfully surprised by how amazing so many of my colleagues are. And it's just been a joy to get to know people throughout the country.
I love that. And I found the same thing too, Julie. It's incredible. There's almost like I don't know what the right word is, so I won't say the wrong word, but it's the vulnerability. I think superintendent to superintendent, that's the same thing I've experienced is people are very willing to be open and honest and share their struggles.
Yeah.
And we don't often do that in mixed spaces.
Right. For good reason.
Good reason.
Yeah.
But I think at the end of the day, we're human too. And in a lot of ways are feeling the incredible weight and responsibility that we've signed up for to lead public agencies, to lead school districts. And, that's weighty. And I think that's one of the things that's common that bonds superintendents together. And you can get right to that place of vulnerability, like you said, pretty quickly, sometimes just in a matter of an opening line, the way you approach a subject. It's like, oh my God.
Right.
Oh
my God, can we talk?
That's right. That's right. And that's something that I think is really powerful. And that's something, frankly, that I don't think the general public has an awareness of.
Yeah.
That, I think, how many times are you approached by somebody and the conversation starts with, you only want kids to come to school because that's how you get paid.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I've heard that. And I wish people had a deeper understanding of how seriously we do actually take our jobs. We do actually care about kids, care about their well-being, and spend an awful lot of sleepless nights thinking about how to best prepare our kids for their futures so that they can be successful. And
Yeah.
it's not too often, but on occasion, one of those kids will come back and say, thank you. I'm now
Yeah.
beyond Oceanside
Right.
Unified School District, and this is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And thank you. Have you
Yeah.
had some situations like that?
What's beautiful, Mike, is that just yesterday I was notified of one of our assistant principals who's going to receive a statewide recognition from an organization called CAPL here in California,
Yeah. Mhm.
and she's being recognized as co-administrator of the year. And this is a young lady. I wish I could say that I was personally responsible for her success, but we just had the good fortune of hiring her this year as an assistant principal. But she went to school here in Oceanside, and she graduated from one of our high schools. And in her interview, she said, "The reason that I want to come back here is because of the way I was treated at the high school, the success that I had, and the people who supported me. I specifically want to come back here and do that same thing for other kids." She was a second language learner, and was here from another country, and had so much success in high school and then in college, and now as a school administrator. And now that she's being recognized, and at the recognition ceremony, what's kind of beautiful is we just determined yesterday, one of our administrators that's going to be able to go to the conference and support her, he was actually one of her teachers
Oh,
in
that's
high
awesome.
school. And
I
now he's
love
a
that.
district office administrator, and he's going to be able to go up there and be with her at the recognition. And that's just one story of someone who's come back into the organization that benefited from the organization.
And
uh,
frankly,
and an incredible story.
wants to pay it forward.
Yes.
And I call
Yes.
those people the OGs because they actually
Absolutely.
walked in the shoes of our students,
Yep.
albeit a few years ago,
Right.
but that's somebody who understands the dynamics of your community,
Yep.
who will be there as a servant to do great work and influence many more people in their role, moving forward. So that's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. How
Yeah.
do
She's an
you
inspiration for
so
sure.
we're kind of getting towards the end, but I want to ask you, kind of change the tenor a little bit and go back to somewhat of a tougher question, which is, how do you handle supporting students when you've got what seems to be like all the odds against you?
Hmm.
People come into the board meetings
Oh, yeah.
who are not members of your
Oh,
community,
yeah.
and
Yep.
that's fairly standard. I mean,
Oh,
you're
yeah.
not alone in
Yep.
that. That happens in a lot of places.
Yep.
Um, and just kind of have that deep constitution
Hmm.
that this is right. These are not easy decisions. You're burning karma,
Hmm.
in some way with other people, but you know in your heart of hearts that this is the right decision to make for kids. What
Yeah.
do you lean on in those moments?
Yeah. That just isn't hard for me. And luckily, it's not hard for my Board of Education. And, a lot of districts say they support all students. And I'm sure that they mean that. But what's beautiful about, I believe, this Board of Education is they spell out what they mean by all students. Literally in our board policies, anything that you could possibly be labeled as, is spelled out in our board policies, that we support you and that we want you to feel included and that you belong in our school district. Right now, as you're aware, the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer students and people in our country are are being persecuted ongoingly, and at board meetings, and at state level policies, and probably very soon here federal level policies, um, and kids are very aware of those things, right? Again, because they have access to the information and they are in tune with what's going on, especially, with their label, whatever that label might be. And this Board of Education is just really, they're unfazed by that. When they mean they support all students, they mean it. So
That
if
is
you're an
awesome.
undocumented student, you're safe here in Oceanside. If you're in the LGBTQ community, you're safe here in Oceanside. If you're homeless, foster, whatever that thing that labels you or others you is, you're going to find a home here in Oceanside Unified. And likely we have a service to support you and help you, because we
Yeah.
know that those people with those kinds of labels are even more persecuted than other people.
Yeah.
And
You're so
they
right.
take it very seriously when they mean we support all students. And so we do it through language and through programs and through action and through resources. And it's just refreshing to work for a Board of Education that just believes that to their core. And so it's very easy
Um,
for me to act upon that and create leaders in the organization who will act upon that.
that's a really big deal. Man, that's a big deal. That just gives me hope for 2025.
Yeah, me
And I
too.
say that because I know boards of education exist like this, but is it too far for me to say they're in the minority? I mean, I feel like, at least through my experiences, boards will be resolute to a certain level,
Mm,
but then I think for some board members, there's always that little thing in the back of their mind that says, "Am I going to get reelected?"
mm,
And I don't know. I mean, I'm just speaking through my personal experience,
right.
and I think what I want to say is kudos to your Board of Education
Yep.
and kudos to you for being resolute
Yeah.
in supporting all students. I mean, we know that a sense of belonging is
Mm,
so incredibly important.
yeah.
And
It's
this
everything.
idea of leaving no learner marginalized,
Hmm.
everybody has a seat at the table, so to speak,
Right.
is such a powerful commitment to kids. I don't know if you have it anywhere in your district motto, but it ought to be "You belong here."
Yeah.
And like I say, just kudos to you, and how incredibly, I guess, what do I want to say? How incredibly awesome that you get to work for a board of education that is so steadfast in their beliefs around supporting all kids.
Yes, as school boards are being more politicized, and we're literally targeting, not we, not you, not me, but there are groups that are targeting kids, vulnerable children in our schools. We have to have leaders like this who will stand up and support kids as human beings. They're going through their most difficult time, right? Like K-12. Are you kidding me? That was the most difficult time of life. Like,
Right?
post high school up until now, like those are basic life challenges, but that K-12 experience, it forms who you are, right? That's when all your things are forming, your brain, your ideas, your values, your sense of self. And like for us, like, you mentioned earlier that in some places and in some experiences, the joy of learning is beaten out of kids. But so can that joy of self be beaten out.
Yeah.
If we
Right.
don't recognize and acknowledge who you are as a human and value you for that and say that we love you for that, um, growing up with doubts about who you are or how you can contribute to the world, I think that's the most harm that we could do. Um,
It's a
and so
basic
working
human need and
a
human
basic
right.
a basic human need is valuing me for who I am and what I bring to the world, and then belonging to that world and feeling a part of. I think that is absolutely a basic human need, and um, I couldn't work in a system that didn't value that. I've worked in systems that didn't value that. But in my sphere, when I was a teacher, right, my sphere was my classroom, principal,
Right.
school. You can create that within an organization, and having the ability to work with a school board to literally focus on a sense of belonging and value, for all of our students and our families and all the labels that we all wear, is a beautiful privilege that I take very seriously. And I'm and so does the Board of Education, and I think people who work here. That is something that I hear a lot from staff, and from parents, that they value, the work that we're trying to do to be very inclusive. And I'm by no means presenting us as a perfect organization or me as a perfect leader or our board is perfect, but we strive to be those things. We strive to be inclusive. We strive to support kids. We strive to provide the best education, and where we're falling short, we'll make adjustments and move forward, to
Yeah.
continue
I mean,
trying to be the best.
it's a system of continuous improvement. And here's the
Yes.
thing. We're learning on the fly how to navigate this
Mm.
uncertain future that we're part
Hmm.
of. And so
For sure.
that's, Julie, I don't know that there's anything else that we could say that would
Mhm.
be a value add to this episode of Superintendent's Hot Seat. You have been absolutely fabulous. We always like to end with a couple of things. One is I'm just going to give you some rapid fire questions.
Okay. I'm
All
ready.
right, you ready?
Yeah.
Coke or Pepsi?
Oh my God, Coke. Absolutely. Coca-Cola.
Sweet or salty?
Salty. You don't even have to finish the sentence.
Vacation or homebody?
Oh, that one's hard because I like both. I'm going to go with homebody. With the ideals to really want to be a world traveler.
Yeah, yeah. Read a great book or watch a great movie?
Movie.
Yeah, all righty, right on. And finally, Julie, what are you most grateful for?
Honestly, McCormick, today, I am grateful. I don't know if you're supposed to really date this episode, but we have fires raging here in Southern California. And they're causing devastation at very, very severe needs. People, lives being lost, homes being lost, schools being lost, communities being devastated.
Yeah.
And I'm thankful for truly my loved ones that are in my life, and that we're safe today, and our community is safe today, and I'm thankful for that in this moment and in this day. And my heart is just breaking, and I'm struggling with the devastation. And we know there's devastation constantly, right, throughout the
Right.
world. This is very, very close to home. And, friends that are experiencing very difficult situations. So I guess, honestly, life and current safety, and surrounded by my loved ones is what I'm currently most finding the most security in.
Yeah, beautifully said. And I think to stay in gratitude,
Yeah,
is a good place to stay. And we'll rally around those folks like we
Yep.
always do.
Yes.
And there'll be a great outpouring of love and support that will come their way.
Yeah.
And that's one of the beautiful things about the human condition is we do seem to, through all of our differences,
Yes.
we seem to pull it together just long enough to support those in need.
Yes.
And, I say that with a smile on my face, but I believe that to be true.
To the core.
Yeah.
Of human decency.
Exactly.
I agree with you. I do.
Yeah.
I do.
Right on. That's it, folks, for today's episode of the Superintendent Hot Seat. Once again, I want to thank our guest, Dr. Julie Vitale. Julie, it's been a real honor and delight to speak with you today. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Mike. Take care.